Good morning, everyone. On the behalf of the League of Women Voters of Manatee County, I welcome you to our program today. I'm Rosalie Schaefer, President of the League of Women Voters, and we have in our audience some of our board members. If you would raise your hand, board members and members. Okay. Well, today we're going to talk about something really important that somehow escapes the public mind. You don't see a lot of people worrying about this group of people. They get ignored, and what happens to them seems to be of little consequence to some people because they say to themselves, well, they got what they deserved, which is unfair. And we all have a stake in what happens to them, because when they get out, they need to reintegrate into society. They need to develop skills and join the rest of humanity and have all the same rights that everyone else has. Because there's a price to be paid for not doing that, which our guest speakers will tell you about. Returning to the community from prison is a complex transition for most offenders, as well as for their families and communities. Over 30,000 Florida prisoners are released annually and re-enter our communities. Many wish to become law-abiding citizens and live a conventional life, yet have few job skills, lack a formal education, and they experience discrimination in housing and job markets because of their records. Repeat crime is costly for the victims, taxpayers, and the offender's family. Our speakers today will discuss helping them make the transition successfully, restoring their rights, and the many ways in which society benefits from this. Our first speaker is Barbara Richards of Project 180, a group that provides services to the formerly incarcerated citizens trying to reintegrate into society. Then after she speaks, we'll have Alice Newline, our Vice President. She will talk about the grave injustice being done by preventing reformed prisoners from voting. Florida is only one of 4 states that take away that right for what could be the person's entire lifetime. Amendment 4 on the ballot will do much to correct that, and she'll be talking about that. Okay, let's get started. Ms. Richards?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate speaking to this wonderful group. I know you do a lot of great things in the community and educate us. I always check the League of Women Voters website before voting ever, so thank you. Again, my name is Barbara Richards, and I'm the founder of Project 180 and operate as its CEO. We've been in business for about 10 years now, and we started because there was such a need for prisoner reentry programs in the state of Florida. I love our mission and our vision. Whoops, if I can get up to that. Project 180 seeks to reintegrate formerly incarcerated citizens into community life, which is our mission, and our vision really has to do with reducing the poverty, homelessness, unemployment, and criminal behavior that often follows time in jail or prison. And we accomplish our mission and our vision through education and through modeling. There are a lot of reasons that people fail after release, but there are definitely some common factors. One is addictive disease, Another is homelessness. There's a very strong relationship between homelessness and incarceration, because if you are incarcerated, you're more likely to become homeless, and if you are homeless, you're more likely to become incarcerated. It's a vicious cycle. Unemployment has traditionally been a terrible problem for individuals who are getting out. There is social and economic marginalization, but fortunately, the employment situation is really changing very rapidly because of the low unemployment rate, and because there are so many employers out there now who are aware of the problem and also aware that we can solve that by hiring individuals who have been incarcerated and who want to work hard and are just totally excited about being out again and having a great job. Low literacy is another level, particularly in employment. We have individuals who might have a difficult time finding work because of their literacy levels, or remaining employed because of it. And then, of course, all of this leads to poverty and instability. Returning citizens, we know, as your president said, that we have about 30,000 people returning every year from state prison. Approximately 7 come to Manatee County each week, and about 5 to Sarasota County each week. So just in our 2-county area, we have 12 people returning from state prison every week, and then dozens more from local jails. In Project 180's classes inside prisons and jails, we survey everyone who comes through our classes, each of our students, and we found that about 38%, 4 in 10, of our students made less than $12,000 annually prior to incarceration. Another 32% made between $12,000 and $36,000 a year. So this is great evidence of individuals who are struggling financially. 17% were homeless prior to incarceration, and 20% have never had a conventional job. This might have been because they went in as juveniles and never had the opportunity to work in mainstream life, or because they worked in the street market. The Department of Corrections says that about 66% are struggling with addictive disease, but those of us who are in this field know that it's really more like 75 or 80%. That's a huge driver of the prison population and of the jail population. And we feel it's important for everybody to know who is getting out so that we know the kinds of services that we need to provide. We found through our surveys that about 7 in 10 have no job prospects when they get out. The good news is that 30% do. And those individuals usually are going back to either a family business, or they have an employer who's sort of stuck by them through their incarceration, or there is the possibility that some of them will be going back to the street market as well. 37% report that they will not have safe, affordable, or permanent housing. Now, we know from the Florida Department of Corrections that about 4 out of 10 of the state inmates have a literacy level of 5th grade or lower. This is very indicative of the fact that we're locking up people who failed in school. 1 in 38 U.S. adult residents are justice involved. This means that this is nationwide, not state statistic, but nationwide statistic. And this means that 1 in 38 are either in prison, in jail, on probation, or on parole. So the question is, what is Project 180 doing about it? And what we're attempting to do is to build bridges between individuals who are incarcerated and those who are not, as well as build bridges from people while they're inside to help them prepare for release, and once they are outside to be able to connect with community resources and have greater opportunity to succeed. The current statistics that just came out are that after 9 years, this was from a 30-state Bureau of Justice Statistics study, after 9 years, 87% of those who have been released from prison, either state or federal prison, will be back inside again, or will be rearrested. So, one of the things that Project 180 does is that we go into jails and prisons and we provide a financial literacy course, because now that people actually can make money on the outside once they get out, they need to know what to do with it. This is a very popular course. We teach it just about every week at the Sarasota County Jail, also at the Bradenton Bridge here in Bradenton, as well as at the Hillsborough County Jail and at Hardy Correctional in Bowling Green. So this course covers credit, how to repair it, how to get credit if you've never had it, how to improve it, all that you need to know about borrowing and loans, budgeting, establishing a positive relationship with a bank instead of a negative relationship, which many people have, savings and the importance of savings and what kind of savings vehicles you can use. Formerly incarcerated citizens are considered highly vulnerable to certain scams and frauds. So the FTC and the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau have put out curricula on how to avoid these scams and frauds. So we teach from those curricula as well. And in January, we're going to add 2 new classes to our Sarasota County Jail curriculum, and we'll include contracts, agreements, and memberships, because when people get out, some typical things to do are to get a gym membership, or do a rent-to-own contract and buy a television, or a rent-to-own contract to buy a home, or sign contracts, say for leases, and we want people to be well informed. And then we'll also include information on federal student loan applications so that people know how to fill out a FAFSA. And we've served over 500 individuals in this program. This is a woman who was at the Bradenton Bridge. I'm not going to use any names today unless I slip, but she was a wonderful student. I will never forget her. We do these surveys where we gather this information, and we provide an opportunity for people to provide comments at the end of the survey. And this woman has 3 children, and she wrote on her survey that she was going to take this information home and teach her family how to save so that they all didn't have to struggle so hard. And that's always stayed with me. I thought that was very poignant. She was also a leader in the classroom. This woman, if she had been born into a family that was more stable, more than likely would have been a professional CEO of a company. She's very, very bright and a great leader. She organized all the women to sign a thank you card, for our teacher, our instructor, Susan Brothers, who's a bank manager here in town. We also, as I mentioned, teach this class at Hardy Correctional. This was our first class that we ever held. It was back in 2014 in February. It's a fantastic group of guys, and many had been down or inside for a long time. So this particular photograph is about our 3 branch managers who were there, bank managers. This is Amanda, who was teaching how to reconcile a checkbook. And if you can see kind of in the background, there are some men around a different table. They were learning how to use an ATM because, of course, many people had never learned how to use one because they'd been locked up when they came out. And then at a third table, how to write a check. So the men circulated in groups and rotated among those 3 tables. And then we taught all of the other things that we teach as well. This, as I said, was a great group. They were very excited about getting their certificates, and this is a shot on after our graduation. We also teach a CEO program. It's a workforce education program in which I take CEOs and hiring managers and workforce agency specialists from CareerSource into the prison to talk about how exactly to find, apply for, interview for, and retain an entry-level position in a felon-friendly industry. So the CEOs talk for about 20 minutes, answer questions. We just went out to DeSoto Annex in Arcadia last Thursday and had a great group of people. And with that class, we had served over 1,000 people through this program in the state prisons. One of the things that we've incorporated into that last program, the CEO program, is our information and referral service. About 2 years ago, we began a statewide county by county search, to gather information on different housing options, employment, and programs in the different counties so that when people get out, we can let them know where they can go within their own county to find some help. We also found that there was a great need for a list of sex offender housing because it's so difficult for them to find housing. So we have updated this again this year and began taking this into the prison system with our CEO program as well, so that people can write on their survey where they're returning to, what kind of resources they need, and then we'll be able to mail those out to them. We've served over 600 people through this program, and these are mostly family members who call, lots of mothers, cousins, brothers and sisters, fathers, and then we often get calls from caseworkers in prisons, as well as social workers and attorneys who are looking for help for their clients. Our Strong Voices lecture series is every year. Tom Scalota has been, and maybe a couple of other people here have been, to the Strong Voices Luncheon Series. It's, to our knowledge, the only lecture series in the country that's ongoing that deals specifically with prisoner reentry issues. So we're very proud of it. This year, in 2019, this coming year, it will be at Michael's on East. It's on Eventbrite now if you'd like to buy tickets. And we'll be discussing, as this year's topic, successful strategies in incarceration and reentry. So I wanted to introduce you to some of the people who have been on our panels and been our speakers before. This was in 2017. We dealt with the prison experience and explored the social and psychological impact of imprisonment on individuals. And these three folks are members who are out in the community. The gentleman on the left has been out for quite some time, and he's a single father. He gives back to the community through NA. He is a wonderful guy. There was an article written about him by the moderator of this panel. They met at the lecture series, and that article was published in Sarasota Magazine last year. As a result of that article, some funders stepped up and have funded him in his own business. So he now has a detailing business and has just started it just in the last couple of months. So we're very proud of him. The woman in the middle spent about, I believe it was a little over 4 years in state prison on a drug charge. She's out doing very, very well, very stable, very committed to recovery, and giving back to the community in her way. She was a volunteer with Project 180 for months. The man on the right, turns out the reason I got into this work was because I wanted to, I was actually very distressed about the literacy level differences between individuals in the community and individuals who are inside. So at that time I lived in San Francisco, and I began volunteering in the San Francisco County Sheriff's Office in a men's support group in the felony wing. And this gentleman on the right was someone who entered the jail when I was working, and I saw him walk in, and I had never been more scared of anybody in my life. He never said anything to me. It was just what he was kind of putting out. Well, a few weeks later, he landed in my class. And to make a long story short, he ended up, after he got out, becoming one of my best friends. He did 18 years altogether. And when he got out in California, it was at the end of 2016, I went out there to pick him up and helped him get reestablished up in San Francisco again. And right now, what this man does is he gives back as a caseworker in his community for other individuals who are returning to the community after doing long stints in prison. So I'm very proud of all of these guys. They're just doing phenomenally well. This is a very interesting story. This was at the same lecture series, but a different day. And the man on the right is Calvin Duncan. Calvin spoke in June, I believe it was, in 2017. And Calvin had spent 28 years in Angola prison, which is one of the most notorious prisons in the country. It's located in Louisiana. It was formerly a plantation. And Calvin was wrongfully convicted. He did all 28 years knowing that he was not guilty of the crime for which he had been committed. During his 28 years, much of which was spent on death row, he worked as a jailhouse lawyer, because when he started working on his own case, he fell in love with the law. So when Calvin was released, he came out here and spoke at our lecture series. The man on the left is Judge Bob Bennett, who is now a senior judge here in the 12th Circuit. Judge Bennett grew up at Angola long before Calvin was ever there. His father worked at Angola and became the warden. So we knew both men's stories. We got them together at the luncheon and had them sit right next to each other, and they reminisced about Angola. Had a great time. The brightest star in our sky at Project 180 is what's called Nick's House. Nick's House is unique in the state of Florida because of the unprecedented levels of support that we provide for the residents. It's brand new. We obtained the house in January, and by May had our first residents come in. It is a recovery home. It's provided on a long-term basis, so individuals are welcome to stay up to 2 years in order to establish themselves and get the financial stability they need to be able to move out. It is comprehensive. We provide as much as we can, as much assistance as we can. We provide food, which the men cook, clothing, transportation. We have a fine and fee assistance program so that someone who's trying to get his driver's license back, which can be a huge process because of usually the great amounts of money that are owed, we will pay half of their fines up to $1,000 once they pay. We'll co-pay with them, and that helps quite a bit with getting their licenses back. And our first guy just got his license back about 2 weeks ago, so we're real happy about that. We partner with Drug Court, Drug Treatment Court here in the 12th Circuit, and they'll recommend individuals to us. We go to interview them, and then that's how we've gotten most of the people into our house. This is A, and he's a wonderful guy. He actually vacated the house about a month ago, and while he was there, incubated his own business, is now successfully operating a pressure washing business in which he is able to support himself, his girlfriend, and her child, whom he has, not legally, but adopted as his own son. We're very proud of him. This is who's our house manager. This is one of the wisest men I've ever met. He is a terrific human being, a great guide, and our program is completely different because he has been right there along with me to get this thing going. This is someone else. And this gentleman, he wouldn't care if I gave you his name. His name is Matt. And Matt is kind of the class clown, but he's also very committed, very dedicated to what we're trying to do. And as you'll see in just a moment, Matt loves mayonnaise. Yes, mayonnaise. This is Matt showing his love for mayonnaise at Costco. He's, like I say, he is the class clown. We sometimes have individuals who will come in and cook dinner with the guys. This was our first evening when we did this. It was great fun. These women had a menu in mind, brought it over to the guys. They talked about it, adjusted a few things. The women took them shopping. They got lots of stuff, brought it home, cooked it together. Everybody sat down and ate. It was one of the greatest evenings we've had. It was a lot of fun. So we've gone from homelessness. Most of the men in our residential program were homeless prior to coming into our program. What they call gutter addiction and jail, to over 500 days clean collectively, almost 500 NA meetings attended, over 240 legitimate hours worked every week as tax-paying citizens, 1 business incubated, and 6 lives saved. So how you can help, how you can build a bridge is to vote yes on Amendment 4. That's a bridge for 1.4 million citizens. You'll hear more. If you like to cook, come over to our house and let's cook dinner together. If you're a business owner, we can take you to prison. If you're a finance industry professional, we would love to have your help in teaching our financial literacy program. And if you'd like to engage in community education and find out more about successful strategies in incarceration and reentry, we encourage you to come to our lecture series in 2019. If you'd like to tutor a resident, we're looking for 2 math tutors right now. So we would love to have your help with that. And you can either join a party or hold a party. This is a fundraiser we have coming up called Dining with Friends, in which people hold small parties in their own homes to help raise funds for Project 180. And we appreciate everyone's help with that. But these are all happening during October, November, and December. So, and if you'd like to contact me, I left some literature back on the table and my business card, and I'm open to questions if anyone has any.
After our speakers finish, we'll have a question and answer session. And when we get to that, please use the microphone on the floor so that it gets into our METV program. So now we're going to have Alice Newline, and she's going to tell us all about Amendment 4. You know, it's been a struggle for a lot of groups to get the right to vote. You know, African Americans had to fight for it. Women had to fight for it. And now formerly incarcerated prisoners have to fight for it. And that doesn't even include all the methods there are for preventing people with the right to vote. So Alice is going to tell us about Amendment 4 and how it may solve at least one of the problems facing people who want to vote.
As we've said at the beginning, during the presentation, we have felons who have completed all the sentences, all the portions of their fines, fees, and yet they still can't vote. And this is a form, you know, we talk about women not having the right to vote for a long, long time. And the taxation without representation was what put it over the top, where the last vote to get women's the right to vote. And this is also a case where someone who has a felony conviction comes out, they regain their life, they're working, and they are permanently barred from voting unless they get clemency. And we're gonna, let's see, there we go. Okay, what we're going to cover today is what it takes for the felony, you to lose your right to vote. So what is felony disenfranchisement? What are the problems with the process of getting your right to vote back? And how Amendment 4 is a solution to this. In the whole United States, there's 6.1 million Americans who are permanently barred because of a felony conviction. But only a quarter of them are actually still incarcerated. And of the people that are barred from voting, felony conviction is the most common reason by far. Laws vary by state. So you have some states where there's no disenfranchisement. You can be in prison and still vote. And we have other states like ours where you are permanently barred from all voting, including presidential, federal voting, unless you get clemency. You see from this chart here how it appears as if the number of felons we have significantly jumped. The reason for that is the war on crime. Crime rates actually dropped. 34% of the people that get a felony conviction, it's because of drugs. So with the mandatory minimum sentences, with the 3-strike rules, with the increased penalties that have come with the war on drugs, this has resulted in a lot more people having felony convictions. And as we said, there's 1.6 million Floridians that are affected, and 1.3 are no longer in custody. If they want to get their votes restored currently, currently, the process is expensive because there's a lot of paperwork they have to fill out. It has to be submitted, and you have to wait 5 to 7 years to even start and have no additional charges during that period. And then you have to travel to Tallahassee to be listened to. This effectively bars many felons because most felons don't have the finances to go through this process, to take the time, to take the money, to travel up there for a hearing. Now, if we look at Florida's lead in disenfranchising, you'll see the first chart there has the 5 states with the most disenfranchised citizen. And you can see we're way up there. If you look across the board there, that bottom one is California. And then the right chart shows the 5 states with the highest percentage of disenfranchised citizens. And all of those are southern states. So it's Florida, Mississippi, Kentucky, Virginia, and Alabama. And Virginia is in one of the 4 with the permanent, and it is in the process of changing their rules. Since 2000, the trend has been away from permanently disenfranchising. So Delaware, New Mexico, Nebraska, and Maryland have all lifted their lifetime bans on felons voting. There's the Maine and Vermont that have no rescission of your rights. This is the constitutional provision that bars felons from voting for life. And a little history on that. This dates back to when the Civil War, post-Civil War period. So what they were really trying to do is ban ex-slaves from voting. And it's just stayed there in our Constitution. So restoration is only granted by a clemency board. And in 2007, Charlie Crist set it up so that once you were done all the terms of your sentence, you automatically got back your voting rights. But when Governor Scott in 2011 became governor, he imposed these new restrictions. So we have a clemency board, and here is the clemency board. They meet 4 times a year, and they listen to 200 cases a year. So you can see here that during the time period, the top bar is the period of automatic restitution. The middle bar is during the Governor Crist period where there was automatic reinstatement, and you can see how much reinstatement has been done by the clemency board. It's almost none. In these hearings, there's no rules. You are to state your case. The governor will say at the beginning there are no rules. It's just how they feel. There's no court oversight. There's no oversight by our Congress. There were 4,076 processed requests for clemency, requested every year. Now, you can do the numbers here and see that at 300 being heard per year, and even with that 300, 66% of them are denied the clemency. They're denied the right to vote. Many, many, many of them for no reason. That just don't feel like it. And at that rate, it would take 38 years to get through that backlog of people that would like to vote but can't. They're looking for clemency. If you'd like to see them, and I've tuned into this, the floridachannel.org. I've tuned into this. It's pretty boring, but it's also pretty disturbing to see the amount that's pried into of their personal life. So there's just about everything on board, whether or not what medications they're taking, what church they go to, all these things which have nothing to do with your right to vote are asked in the process of trying to plead for their right to vote. So we have individuals that have completed their debt to society. They've done their time. They've paid any fines. They've done the probation. And on top of this, we're going to add this extra layer of punishment of you have to go, you cannot vote. And if you want to vote, you have to go plead your case. It's slow and it's arbitrary. Now, the costs, and this has been referred to by Rosalie at the beginning, the costs are huge to the community because we have individuals that do have the right to vote granted back to them are 33% less likely to reoffend. So you're going to have a safer community. You're going to have safer homes. It's going to save a lot of money, and I hope you picked up the economic brochure at the front that talks about how much money will be saved, taxpayer money, by less court use, less imprisonment, and less police costs. And it's the right thing to do. It is, if they're out and they've done their time, they should be granted full citizen rights. Now, why is it we just don't pass a law and make it go away? Well, that was tried. That was tried back in 1974, and there was the 1974 Correctional Reform Act, which provided for automatic reinstatement. And the state Supreme Court said that the Constitution trumps a law. The only way to reverse this is to pass a constitutional amendment. It's also the only way to keep it from really erratic. You might say, well, maybe we'll get another governor that will go to automatic. Well, we can be flip-flopping arbitrarily back and forth endlessly. So the cure is this constitutional amendment. So what can you do? I think we've already said here that the main thing is let people know about it. Let people know the statistics, the important statistics, because a lot of times people will think, oh, well, they don't deserve to vote because they broke the law. But if you get to, first of all, they've done their time. But second, you're going to be safer. It's going to save money. The 33% reduction in crime, the fact that we are taxing people without representation, and the fact that our state is out of sync with the rest of the country are all impressive facts to get people to vote for Amendment 4. So, and I do want to make the point that it does exclude murderers and felony sex offenders. So, any questions?
Thank you to both our speakers. That was a great presentation. I'd like to start the question and answer period. You can start lining up at the podium there, at the microphone. You've got one from Ms. Richards. What do the people you work with say is their biggest problem with returning to society?
It really varies by person, and it varies by their situation, each person's individual situation. But some of the things that I hear most often are, it's very difficult to adjust in terms of one's interrelationship with other people. Being around, if you've been inside for a long time, sometimes being in crowds is very difficult. If you've been in for a long time, walking across the street can be dangerous because you've forgotten how to do it. And a long time could be 2 years. I mean, prior to that shift that Alice showed in the graph with the rise in disenfranchisement, what that represented were that represented people who were being remanded to prison or jail. Those were convictions that people had to serve time for. And sentences did become longer because of the mandatory sentencing obligations that judges were obliged to give certain length sentences for certain crimes. So prior to that time period that started in about 1973, a long sentence here or in Great Britain or Canada was considered about 2 years. And the United States really led the way for these extremely long sentences that people have to serve. So someone who's served a long sentence is going to have a lot different adjustment period to someone who's, say, getting out of jail. One of the things that I heard from one of our residents the other day was that, it's hard for people on the outside to understand that when we're in jail, we have to watch ourselves all the time, jail or prison. You're constantly worried about being jumped or having something stolen from you or having someone lie to you, take advantage of you, coerce you. And when you get out, it's very hard to make that transition to trusting people and being able to be in large crowds and not have that sort of gotta look behind my back feeling all the time. So I would say that those are two of the big things. There's a wonderful program. I showed you the picture of Terrence who sat on our panel. And when I visited in San Francisco, he took me to a house that he thought was doing a really good job. When they had someone who had been inside for a long time, the first day they were at the house, they would walk them to the front door, open the door, and the person would look out. Shut the door, go back inside, process it. The next day, they'd go out on the porch, then go back inside. The next day, they'd walk down the steps to the sidewalk, go back inside. The next day, walk to the curb, back inside. The next day, down to the corner, back inside. And slowly but surely, they would orient someone to being out in the community in a way that they might not have been for decades. So I hope that answered the question.
I'll stand on my toes. I'm curious about the remaining, the felons accused of murder or sex crimes. There's a wide range of sex crimes, so I'm wondering, do they still have the ability to go through the appeals process?
This constitutional amendment just automatically grants it to individuals that have paid their debt to society, all fines, fees. It's still within the power of the governor to grant clemency to someone that has committed a sex crime or murdered someone. So it's still possible for them to get the right to vote back through a clemency process. Now, you can say the same thing, you said there's a wide range of offenses. You can say the same thing about all the other felony crimes. There's a huge range there. So you can go all the way from somebody that drove with a suspended driver's license to somebody that beat someone up to nearly killing them. So in both instances, there's a wide range, but in both, there's a mechanism. So in one, the mechanism is there. We would assume that someone that beat someone till they were nearly dead has got a long-term sentence, where someone that drove with a suspended license may never go. Quite a few of people with felony convictions most of them never get incarcerated. They go into diversion programs. They either get no sentence at all, they've committed a financial crime and they get no sentence at all, or they're diverted into a drug rehab program or some other program, or they wear a bracelet and they get home stay so they don't actually get incarcerated.
Thank you.
This is on Amendment 4, and I'd like to preface my question with a thank you to the League of Women Voters. I am so grateful for all of the work and the research and the materials and the people that you've put forward to help get Amendment 4 passed. And you're just such an integral part of that coalition of Floridians who are doing something good for the state. And I'm looking forward to your continued support and your continued activities in the future on these very important issues. My question is so that I don't exceed what people's expectations should be. After this amendment passed on the 6th, what is the practical implementation time frame or mechanisms that people should be looking for? Because I don't hear much talk about that, and I don't want people thinking that after the 6th, on the 7th, they can go register to vote.
Good question. According to the constitutional amendment, it's immediate. So that if I were an ex-felon, that I would fill out a form and turn it into the supervisor of elections the day after it passed. So it's going to be the job of the supervisor of elections to implement how they call out and say this felon. Right now, they're just looking for felony. After that point, they're going to have to weed it out by, is this felony for murder or a felony sex crime? Well, no, all right, it's okay, it's approved. Or no, it's denied because of that. And it'll be the supervisor of elections' job to do that. But this gives them an immediate right to vote.
Okay, thank you. And most importantly then, it will not require any enabling legislation from the legislature. That's...
I'm going to defer to, Rosalie says no. It does not require enabling legislation. This one can stand alone. If they want to pass enabling legislation, they can. But this one enables them to vote on its own.
I've got another question for Ms. Richards. I was wondering, what do you see as differences between the formerly incarcerated women and men? Do they react differently to reintegration into society? Do they have more or fewer problems?
That's a tough question. Again, I think it's very individual and depends upon what type of history and background they have. I know that most women who are incarcerated, I believe it's 80%, have been sexually abused in their lives. And I don't believe that the percentage of men is quite that high, although it is too high, no matter what it is. And so there is an adjustment, I believe, anytime someone gets out. There are fewer resources for women, and that's potentially because there are fewer women who are incarcerated. At the state level here in Florida, it's about 7% women, 93% men. And the highest state that I know of incarcerating women is Oklahoma, which is double that, 14%. Probably because there are a lot of women involved in transportation of drugs, and Oklahoma City sits right at the crossroads of two major interstates. So there's a lot of action there. But back here to Florida, I've seen people reintegrate in many different ways, and I don't know that it would be along gender lines specifically.
You commented that we could come down and cook with the. Where's the house located?
It's in Sarasota, and it is near Clark and Honore. So we don't reveal the address of the home, but yeah. But we'd love to have you all cook with us if you're interested, or go to jail or prison with us.
I have a question for both ladies. Currently, the process for clemency is expensive, long, and arbitrary. Amendment 4 wants to do away with that and have voters' rights reestablished immediately. My question is, should there not be checks and balances in restoration of voter rights to ensure that we maintain a high degree of integrity in our voter base?
Well, my answer to that may not be politically correct, but I would say there are probably a lot of people who are voting now who might not maintain a high degree of integrity. So we wouldn't really be changing it that much. And you have to remember that these are individuals who have done their time. So they may have made a mistake, but they're...
Yeah, I'm going to reiterate the same thing, is that if we start saying that that your right to vote is based on whether or not you've been a good person, who's going to be the judge on that? I think the real thing is you're a citizen, you've paid your debt to society, and it's paid. So it's time to get your rights back. And we certainly know that there are many people out there who have moral failings of their own or lack of judgment that can, do we go in and say, well, we really don't want anybody that's an alcoholic, because that kind of scrambles your brain a little, and so maybe they shouldn't vote. And then, it's a slippery slope.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't want this to turn into a debate, but yes, that's exactly the point. I mean, so right now it's 5 to 7 years, but if we cut it down to like a year or two to give these people who are just being released a chance to reintegrate. And and Barbara, you said that a lot of these ex-cons have very minimal education. I mean, is that not important to having like a really strong voter base that is like dependent on maintaining good officers in office and things like that? I mean, is that not?
Thank you for clarifying that. Well, I do want to correct one misunderstanding, and that is I didn't say that they're uneducated. I said that they have low literacy levels, which can lead to lack of education. However, it doesn't mean that these are individuals who aren't smart. Yes. State prisoners. 30, one of the slides did say 37% literacy level of state prisoners. That is true. But again, that doesn't mean that these aren't smart individuals.
Right. I think we might be regressing into literacy tests, which were outlawed because of their discriminatory basis. And there are people that as Barbara said, are quite intelligent, but they may have difficulty reading, they may be dyslexic, they may be something else. You get back into, the House of Lords, and they are the ones with all that are smart enough to know how to rule. Well, I think we've discovered that we need really a whole bunch of different people to input as opposed to one class, whether that's nobility or whether that's people that have a high level of education.
And if I may, also, as I mentioned, the individuals who have been on the panel at the lecture series, they're all doing great things now in the community. And just because someone may not be highly educated doesn't mean that they don't have the ability to give back. Plus, these are people who know what the real problems in our community are. Most of our prison population is driven, or the high level of our prison population is driven by the fact that we have social problems that we haven't addressed: homelessness, poverty, early childhood education, medical care. A lot of the problems are driven by that.
Thank you. Barbara, you may have noticed, and I apologize that I left the room for a few minutes. It was a young man and 2 of his friends. He had been in prison for 10 years, and he's looking to get back into society, and he thought that's what was going on here. So that was very exciting. He was very excited that there was such a program, and I do have his name, and he has your information. But it led me to think, do you have, or does any organization have an outreach program to draw these people in? Perhaps they're living on the streets, or they don't have the wherewithal. What he said was he had been in prison short times before, but this last time for 10 years. But he said, I know I need to have an approach that I'm not using to get back into work so I can build a career. He says, it's time for me to shape up and face the world and get something done.
Good for him. It does take personal commitment, dedication, and ambition, because there are a lot of stumbling blocks. I'm glad you gave him my information. Thank you so much. One of the things, I want to jump back just for a quick minute. One of the things that Project 180 is attempting to do is to change the language by which we refer to individuals who have been incarcerated. We call them citizens as much as possible. Our old mission was Project 180 seeks to reintegrate former offenders into community life. And we changed that former offenders to formerly incarcerated citizens, because these are citizens of our country, and we need everybody. There was a very interesting article that I read in my master's program at FSU, and it was by a woman named someone Prayer, and she had investigated researched the punishment practices of the early colonial settlers, European settlers who came over, and they lived in these small farming villages, and a circuit judge would ride around on his horse. He would ride the circuit, literally, and hand down punishments to individuals who had broken the law. But during planting time and harvest time, those punishments were usually not carried out because they were public spectacles, which involved some amount of pain. You can think of the stocks, for example, which could permanently injure someone. And so they didn't hand these punishments down because everyone in the community was needed to bring in the harvest that would keep the entire community alive. We have forgotten about that. At that time, trials were private, punishment was public. We have reversed that. We now have public trials and punishment behind the walls of prisons and jails, where the community does not have the opportunity just to observe the punishment being carried out. And I'm not recommending that we go back to stocks and flogging. I don't think that that's right at all. But again, it comes back to the bridge that Project 180 is trying to build, where individuals on the outside can go into the prisons with us and meet people and see that these are intelligent individuals who just want to do the right thing. And it's time for us to give them a chance.
Hi, thank you for giving me another opportunity. In the interest of full disclosure, I am a felon who has had my rights restored. And I would say that of everyone here, I am the expert on this issue. And I will tell you, there is not one good and sufficient reason anyone can bring forward to say vote no on this issue. The purpose of this constitutional amendment stems from the 1868 Constitution of Florida. And when Florida was trying to reconstruct themselves, they decided that in order to suppress the ex-slaves from voting, they would instruct the Constitution of Florida to say that if you are a felon, you cannot vote. And it was not only felonies then, it was certain other crimes that could be ginned up against black people. Never mind the Ku Klux Klan and other people intimidating black people. This was just one tool. We've gotten rid of the night riders. We've gotten rid of a lot of things. But this we have not gotten rid of yet. That's all this is, because some of the most intelligent people I've ever met have been behind prison walls. The fact is that there are people voting, as you said, who are as dumb as a box of rocks, to put it in the pejorative. So no, We are like anybody else. We're good people, we're bad people, we're smart people, we're not so smart people, we're thieves, and we're not thieves. There is no difference. This whole issue of what we got to fight for is something that the Supreme Court should have outlawed years ago. So, I don't have a question.
We are out of time. But I want to thank our speakers very much for their excellent presentations and question answering. I also want to thank the Bradenton Women's Club for the use of their hall and METV for taping our program, which will be watchable at www.metvweb.com. You just click on their YouTube link and you will find the listing of this program. And for more election information, see our website, Voter Information Center, at www.lwvmanatee.org, and pick up some of our voters' guides on your way out. If you need some for your group, just let me know and we'll see if we can spare a packet. And see, our next program will be the first Monday in November, and it will be on homelessness in Manatee County, what it is and what needs to be done. So thank you so much for coming today. And I encourage you to join our league. The more members we have, the more we can do. Thank you.